All right, everybody, welcome back. We've got more rookies to look at, and now we're looking at some rookies that there might not be quite as much to say about simply because they are undrafted rookies. They did not get picked. There were over 250 opportunities to get picked in the most recent NFL draft, and they fell through every single slot, and then they ended up on a team on a UDFA contract. So we're going to talk about some of the more interesting ones, but there's definitely going to be less intrigue with these guys compared to the guys who got picked. The guys who got picked bring something, usually, not always, but usually there's a reason why they got drafted and these guys didn't. So with that being said, I'm going to start the conversation with George Holani. George Holani is going to be our first UDFA because I fully expect him to make the 53-man roster. Unless he doesn't look good in camp, I think that he will make this team. And I think that he even has a pretty decent chance of playing, even if it's only a little bit as a rookie. We simply need a fourth running back, and Holani strikes me as clearly the guy who is best equipped to be able to do that. I don't know who else it could really be. We did bring in a couple of other UDFA running backs, but Holani to me is clearly the guy we like the most. So George Holani, running back from Boise State, 24 years old, spent a good amount of time at Boise State. He was there for 5 years. We did get a full gamut of combine performances from him. He did everything at the combine, so we have a pretty good idea of what he is physically. About average height for a running back, 5'10" and 3/8, 208 pounds, which is a little bit lighter than average. Maybe in the modern NFL, that's about typical though. Short arms, 29 3/4, and he's got big hands, 9 3/4 inch hands. Combine was mixed. He had a decent enough 40, 4.52. That's like Zach Charbonnet territory. 1.57 10-yard split is about average. His vert and his broad were excellent, 91st and 92nd percentile, so there's some explosiveness in him that I'll just go ahead and say didn't always show up on the football field, but that's promising. 3-cone was ugly, 7.32. 20-yard shuttle was below average, 4.33, and his bench press was really good at 24. So there's some good, there's some bad, there's some mediocre overall. So we've got a lot of numbers to get through here with Holani because he played 5 years at Boise State, and with running backs, there's a lot of figures you can work through. So 2019 for Boise State, he plays 14 games. He would not play another season of that many games in his college career. I'm just going to say that right now, so don't get used to it. He wasn't a full-time player yet. He only played 480 snaps, but that's a good amount of snaps. 192 rushes, over 1,000 yards, 5.3 yards per carry, 7 touchdowns, 673 yards came after contact, so that's like 2/3. 3.5 yards after contact per attempt, so most of his damage being done after he first hits the defense or the defense first hits him. 23 of his runs went for 10 or more yards, 13 of his runs went for 15 or more yards, so there's a decent amount of breakaway here, but he doesn't convert a lot of his breakaway opportunities into actual breakaways because he doesn't have that upper level speed. 34 targets, 26 catches, so he's a relatively prolific receiver out of the backfield, 200 yards. Had massive production, and by the way, this should not be 383, this should be 283. So he had more yards after the catch than he had yards catching. So most of his catches come behind the line of scrimmage, and then he goes and makes something happen. 3 touchdowns. Across all of his touches, forced 59 missed tackles, pretty good amount, mostly through power, but also a little bit with elusiveness. 3 fumbles, which is concerning. 3 penalties, 2 drops, 1 quarterback hit allowed, and 5 quarterback hurries allowed. You can see his snap splits, 194 run, 167 passing plays where he ran a route. And then he had 63 pass block reps, 56 run block reps. So he did a little bit of everything. Pretty good spread here. Almost always lines up in the backfield. lined up in the slot 25 times, wide 8 times, lined up as a inline tight end once and a quarterback once. About 2-1 in favor of zone over gap with the kinds of runs that are schemed for him. And he's graded out fairly well. His run grade's real good. Pass grade is okay. Run block grade is average, mediocre, and pass block grade is abysmal. So this is just the first year, right? It should be getting better and better with each year that goes by, right? Like, this should be the floor. We should be seeing better things. Well, not really. I mean, 2020 was the COVID year. He only played in 3 games, 65 snaps, so he basically played like a game worth of football, maybe a game and a half. So we didn't get to see a heck of a lot here. Had over 100 yards, 5.7 yards a carry, and a touchdown. Had a few longer runs. Had about, 45% of his yards after contact, 7 catches, 43 yak yards on 52 total, 2 touchdowns receiving. I mean, it doesn't really tell us much because he just didn't play enough. He graded out well in all areas, but this was the COVID year. So 2021, he played in 9 games. So a little bit better. Still only 320 snaps, though. So we're not getting a full picture here. Averaged 4.8 yards a carry, 569 yards, 1 touchdown. A vast majority of his yards come after contact, 3.54 yards after contact per attempt. 16 of his runs go for 10 or more yards, 7 go for 15 or more yards. Gets targeted 18 times, 14 catches, 160 yards. So that's actually a significant chunk of yards per catch. Has more yak yards than he does receiving yards by like 9 yards. So again, most stuff is just check down, safety valve, dump off stuff. 42 missed tackles forced. I mean, that's really good. That's a really good ratio. 1 fumble, 1 penalty, 1 drop. Allows 7 total quarterback pressures. So still struggling with the pass protection stuff. He's letting his quarterback get dinged up quite a bit. The snaps pretty much even between run and pass. 48 pass block reps, 25 run block reps. Again, almost entirely out of the backfield. 20 snaps in the slot and 8 as a wide receiver. Now he starts to get more gap runs than zone runs. Boise State starts to employ a little bit more of a gap-based rushing attack. And he graded out really well. The run grade is really good. The run block grade's good. Pass grade is pretty okay. Pass block grade is about average. So he's developing, but we're not seeing him as much as we would like. He's playing 9 games, 320 snaps. This is where the injuries start to happen. This is where he starts to get held back by his inability to stay healthy. Then we go to 2022. This is probably the most prolific season of his college career. 13 games, 508 snaps, 221 rushes for 1,157 yards, 5.2 yards a carry. So now we're talking here. This is a full season of work, 10 touchdowns. Almost 70% of his yards come after contact, 3.43 yards per contact, yards after contact per rush. 26 rushes of 10 or more yards, so that's 2 a game, and about half of those get converted into rushes of 15 or more yards. Really efficient receiver. He gets targeted 27 times, 24 catches, 151 yards, 6.3 yards per reception, and he also has a massive number of yards after the catch, so again, almost all that stuff in the backfield. He averages 6.3 yards per catch, but he averages 9 yards after catch per reception, which that seems a little more extreme than you usually see it, right? 82 missed tackles forced. So we're talking about 221 rushes, 24 catches. That's 245 touches, and he's forcing 82 missed tackles. That's about 1 per 3 touches. I mean, that's I can't say anything bad about that. 2 fumbles, 1 penalty, 6 hurries allowed. So again, the quarterback protection stuff is still a little bit sloppy, although it's a little better this year, I guess. 222 run snaps, 190 pass route snaps, or going out to catch a pass, 53 pass block, 34 run block. Again, basically everything comes in the backfield. A little bit in the slot, 13, 8 as a wide receiver, 10 as a quarterback. Again, a little bit more gap than zone, although it's pretty close. And he graded out really well. Almost a 90 run grade, 70.5 pass grade. His pass block rate is abysmal, like really, really dragging the bottom of the barrel here, 27.5. And the run block rate is okay-ish, kind of, sort of. I mean, he doesn't do it enough for it to really matter, but not really developing in those areas. But as a player, you can see the improvement. And then we get to 2023, which was, I mean, it was a bit of a bummer. He only played in 8 games. So, again, he's missing time with injuries. And that's definitely something that has to factor into our evaluation here. 330 snaps, 134 attempts. I mean, good yard per carry average, almost 750 yards, 7 touchdowns. A lot of his yards come after contact. Continues to be a grinder post-contact, 3.65 yards after contact per attempt. 18 rushes of 10 or more yards. 8 go for 15 or more. So he's busting some nice carries, but he's not turning a lot of them into truly chunk carries. 20 targets, 17 catches. So still a very efficient receiver. 199 yards receiving. And again, he has more yak than yards receiving. So that tells you that he continues to be mostly a guy who is catching the ball in the backfield and then going to make things happen. Forces 50 missed tackles. Again, it's a good rate. It's about 1 for every 3 touch. 1 penalty, 2 hurries allowed, which is an improvement. 134 run snaps, 107 pass ones. He's doing a good amount of pass protection. He's got 59 snaps in 8 games, so he's doing a lot of it. And it did, I guess, numerically get better this year. 30 run block snaps, 307 out of the backfield, 12 in the slot, 6 wide, 5 quarterback. Again, more gap than zone, although there's a good mix of both. And he graded out overall well in the areas where he touches the ball. He did not grade out well as a pass blocker at all, and his run block grade was just okay. I don't know why his pass block grade was so bad when he went down to 2 hurries allowed on 59 snaps, which is a big improvement over the previous year. I know that the grade did go up significantly, but it's still really bad. Like 2 hurries allowed on 59 pass block reps from a running back. On the surface, that seems like it would be okay. So there's clearly something else going on here. More on that later. But the run grade was 88.1 and the pass grade was 73.3. So he's doing well in those areas. And he had a full collegiate career. And looking at the total numbers here, you get a very clear picture. 47 games, 1,700 snaps, 685 attempts, 3,600 yards, over 5.2 yards a carry, 3.49 yards after contact per attempt. So most of his stuff comes after contact, 26 touchdowns, 86 runs of 10 or more yards, and half of those go for 15 or more. So again, he's getting, when he breaks off a good run, it's not too common he turns it into like a great run. He's less Ken Walker and more Zach Charbonnet. Really good receiver, though. 106 targets, 88 catches, 777 yards. And literally all of it is done through yards after the catch. Forces a grand total of 238 missed tackles in his collegiate career. We are talking about a guy who is doing it about once every 3 touches. 7 fumbles, most of those came early in his career. 6 penalties. I think 3 of those came as a rookie. 4 drops, 3 QB hits allowed, and 18 hurries allowed. So we have ourselves a pretty clear picture of a pretty good sample size at the end. I know the injuries sucked. I would have liked to have seen him more in 2023, but if we did, he probably would have been drafted. 231 pass block snaps in his career, 691 runs, 628 pass routes run, or routes. Some of them aren't really routes. 153 run block snaps. Almost exclusively a backfield player. Has a grand total of 105 reps as a receiver of some kind. And he has slightly more zone than gap reps in his resume, although it's very close, and he's got extensive experience in both. So that's George Holani by the numbers. Those are the stats. Those are the facts. But now we have to talk about the player a little bit. So keep your eyes peeled for a little bit later today. I will go deeper into George Holani in terms of what he brings to the table. See you guys later. Go Hawks.